So in the last class, we have defined this vector quantity A uniquely by defining its divergence as well as curl. Okay, so these are the definition for the divergence, and curl was defined as H is equals to 1 by mu del cross A. Okay, so we have uniquely defined this divergence and curl as well. So how we have defined this divergence from this expression, that is what we are going to see today. Okay, and we'll go after that also. So how we have defined this divergence, because we have seen these are the expression from where we have taken the condition, that is source free case. So if the waves exist in the medium but we are not considering the source, because we have been considering these waves at a far distant point, so for that case, source free condition, we have been taken that J is equals to 0, and we have come to our conclusion for defining this divergence of the vector quantity A. So how we have taken this divergence from this expression, let us see that first. So that has been defined by using an condition known as Lagrange-Gauge condition. So I'm just writing this expression again. That was del square A minus mu epsilon del 2A by del T2 is equals to minus mu J plus mu epsilon del T of del V plus gradient of divergence of T. So from this we have come to our conclusion by taking this mu epsilon, this part, and this part is equals to 0. So this two terms has been considered as 0. So this condition is known as Lagrange-Gauge condition. So by Lagrange-Gauge condition, what we have written, this mu epsilon del T del V plus gradient of del dot A is equals to 0, or mu epsilon del T of V plus divergence gradient of del dot A is equals to 0. So from here, if we take this gradient as a whole, so we can write mu epsilon del V by del T plus del dot A is equals to 0. So from here we have taken that del dot A should be minus of mu epsilon del V by del T. That is what has been written on equation number 15. So if we apply this Lagrange condition, what is that condition? This part should be 0. So it results into this equation 14 reduces to, after applying this Lagrange condition, by applying Lagrange condition, equation 14 reduces to del square A minus mu epsilon del 2A by del T2 is equals to minus of mu J. Equation number 16. So this is the equation for the magnetic vector potential. So here you will find the whole expression, or this equation is expressed in terms of magnetic vector potential only. So by taking this condition, what we did, we have decoupled this magnetic vector potential and scalar potential. We have decoupled this by taking this condition. We have decoupled this magnetic vector potential and scalar potential from this expression, that is from equation number 14. Now here if we take the divergence of this equation 8, so what we can write? Taking divergence of equation 8, we can write del dot E plus, this is equation 8, is equals to minus of del square V. So we can write that is del dot E plus del dot A by del T equals to minus del square V. So del dot E is equals to rho by epsilon, and this del dot del A by del T, that can be written as mu epsilon, this one. So here it is del dot A. So if you take the differentiation again, so this one will become second order. So we can write minus mu epsilon del 2 V by del T2 is equals to minus del square V. So by Lorentz condition, it was equation number 15, using equation 15. Okay. So what we can write here, this del square V minus mu epsilon del 2 V by del T2 is equals to minus rho by epsilon. So this is one equation which is with respect to magnetic vector potential only. This expression, it is the expression consisting of scalar potential only. So by using this Lorentz condition, we have decoupled this two potential. One is magnetic vector potential, one is scalar electrostatic potential. So these two equations are same as the wave equation. So if we write all together, that is del square A minus mu epsilon del 2A by del T2 is equals to minus mu J, del square V minus mu epsilon del 2V by del T2 is equals to minus rho by epsilon. So if we look into our wave equation, those was in terms of phasor form, that is del square Hs minus j omega mu sigma plus j omega epsilon Hs is equals to 0. Del square Es is equals to j omega mu sigma plus j omega epsilon Es is equals to 0. So this equation, this left hand side equation, is symmetrical to our wave equation. Only the thing is that these wave equations are considered for the source free condition. So if we consider this J and rho is equals to 0, then we can take the similarity with the wave equations. We can take the similarity with the wave equations. So what we can say? So by essentially defining this Lorentz condition, we not only decouple the two potentials, but we get the equation which are identical to the wave equation. we are not only been decoupled these two potential, that is magnetic vector potential and electric scalar potential, but also we have defined the equations, or we get such equations which are identical to the wave equation by putting J and rho is equals to 0, that is source free condition. So this in equation 16, in this equation, this del square operator itself is scalar. So for a given current density, the direction of the magnetic vector potential everywhere in the space is same. This del square operator, it doesn't have any effect on this vector quantity. So depending upon the some current distribution or some certain current density, the vector potential will be same everywhere, because it is only the scalar operator. So this identity of this A will not going to change. Whatever the vector quantity it will be, it will remain same. Only some operation will be applied or some operation is done on that. Okay, so this vector potential will have the same direction along the direction of the current. So when we have certain time varying source, then we have electric and magnetic vector potential, and both of these are governed by the wave equations. Whenever we have been exciting any source with respect to some time varying sources, that is, let us consider some AC source, then we will have this electric and magnetic vector potential, and both of these are governed by this wave equations. So what we can say, this magnetic vector potential and scalar potential, both of them have wave behavior in 3D space, because they are having the similarity with this wave equation. So they will behave like wave equations, or wave behavior they will have in the 3D space. So we can go with the operation for any kind of sources, whatever the sources we are having excited to any structure, then we can take into consideration of these two equations to achieve the wave behavior from those structures, to achieve wave behavior from those structures. Now this is our vector potential. These are the expression of the vector potential. Now how to take the solution of these potentials? Because we need to deal with A. We need to find out the solution of this A. These are the expression which has been defined by this A. So these are the scalar potential, sorry, scalar operator. It is double derivative. So we need to take out this A and V to get the, to take a certain current and putting on that current on this expression, so that we can have our fields, electric field or magnetic field, because on this equation we need the value of this A. On this equation we need the value of this A. So once we'll have this A, then we can get our magnetic field from any kind of structure, and consequently we can also able to achieve our electric field. So this A, it is having the contribution from the source how we have been defined, that is from this current density. So what is the current source, how this current density been exist on a structure, that will give us the indication of this vector potential, and that vector potential will give us the magnetic field. That magnetic field consequently will result into the electric field according to the Maxwell's equations. So our next task is to find out the solution of this vector potential. We need to find out the solution for this vector potential. Solution for potential. So we can say whatever the expressions we have derived for this scalar potential or magnetic vector potential, we have defined two different equations, but they are not different. They are not independent. Why? Because they are related to the Lorentz-Gauge condition. They are related to the Lorentz-Gauge condition. So the two equations was del square A is equals to epsilon del 2A by del T2 is equals to minus mu J. That was one equation. Another equation was del square V minus mu epsilon del 2 V by del T2 is equals to minus rho by epsilon. So these are the two equations, though we have defined separately, but they are not independent. They are related through the Lorentz-Gauge condition. So it is therefore not required to solve both equations. If any one of them we can able to solve, we can take out the solution for other. That is, if we can able to get the solution for this A, we can find out the solution for V. If we can have the solution for this V, we can take out the solution for A. Okay. Now, if we solve the equation for this V and obtaining A, that involves what? From equation 15. Just taking that. So if we get the solution of V from this expression, from this equation 17, then using this Lorentz-Gauge condition we can able to take out this A. So it needs partial integrations. This side it is derivative. To take out this A, we need to go with the integration of A. If we have been going with the solution of V from this expression 17, then obtaining A from this equation 15 involves some integration, right? Because this side is derivative, that side it will become integration. Whereas if we solve for A in this equation 16, then finding V, it will requires time integration. Okay, so for time harmonic potentials, which is varying with respect to some time, that is e to the power j omega t, integration with respect to time is much simpler than going with the integration. Integration with respect to time, it is much simpler because simply we going to multiply the quantity with respect to 1 by j omega in the frequency domain. I am just writing all those things, otherwise you people will won't understand. Although A and V have two different equations, they are not independent. The two equations are related through the Lorentz-Gauge condition. It is therefore not required to solve both equations 16 and 17. We can solve one of the two equations to get solution for either A and V. Then we use Lorentz-Gauge condition to find the solution for other. Now we can go with solving V, then we can find out A, or we can go with solving A, we can find out V. However, from this equation 15, we can finding V. First we can find V, we can get A, or we can find A, then we can get V. So either way we can go. However, if we solve equation 17, that is for V, 17 for V, obtaining A from 15, this equation involves partial integration. So if we solve for V, then we need to do the integration for getting A. Whereas if we solve A using 16, finding V from 15 involves only a time integration. Okay, so if we solve A, so then if we're going to find out V, what we need? We need a time integration. First solving A, then putting here, that is derivative, so that's it, that will go, and it needs integration. For time harmonic potential, that is varying as e to the power j omega t, integration with respect to time is much simpler, as it is equivalent to multiplying the quantity by 1 by j omega. Okay, so it is much simpler since it is equivalent to multiplying the quantity with 1 by j omega only in the frequency domain. Therefore, we go for solving A first. For solving A first, then we'll find out V. Now, assuming that the potentials and fields, that is E, H, A, all of them are vector, have a time variation e to the power j omega t, right? Then any time variation, time derivative, we can write directly as j omega, that is del t can be written as j omega, or del 2 by del t2 can be written as minus of omega square. So our expression was del square A minus mu epsilon del 2A by del T2 is equals to minus mu J. Now this one will become del square A minus del 2 by del T2 will become minus omega square. So it will be omega square mu epsilon A minus mu J. Equation number 8. Okay. So here this omega square mu epsilon is the square of the propagation constant gamma square in the medium. Here omega square mu epsilon is the square of the propagation constant gamma square in the medium. And for antenna problems, we take free space and for free space this mu is equals to mu naught, epsilon is equals to epsilon naught, and omega square mu epsilon is the square of the phase constant beta, is the square of the phase constant beta in the free space. So what does it mean? Beta is equals to omega root over mu epsilon. That is what we know. So for free space, that one will be mu naught epsilon naught for free space. So therefore del square A plus this one can be written as beta square A is equals to minus mu J. Equation number 19. So we have considered the antenna problems and that has been taken into free space. That is taken into consideration of the free space. So on the free space, this omega mu epsilon, it is the square of the omega square mu epsilon, it is the square of the phase constant beta. Okay, so we have been replaced this one by beta. Now on this equation, this del square is a scalar operator and this equation is basically a scalar differential equation. The vector nature is only due to this A and J. This vector nature is only due to this vector potential A and the current density J. So what we'll do, we'll solve this equation treating A as some scalar quantity. We'll treat this A as some scalar quantity and after getting the solution of this differential equation, we'll multiply the solution by appropriate vector value or vector constant. Okay, so the technique is since del square is a scalar operator, therefore this equation is basically a scalar differential equation. The vector nature is only in the variable a and j. So we will solve this equation treating a as some scalar quantity and after getting the solution of this differential equation, we will multiply the solution by appropriate vector constant. Now this equation 19 is solved by using Green's function technique. So I'm just coming to that. Equation 19, that is del square A plus del square A is equals to minus mu J, is solved by Green's function technique. What is this Green's function? The Green's function basically is a spatial impulse response, just try to have a look, of a system, spatial impulse response of a system represented by the differential equation. The Green's function basically is a spatial impulse response of a system. Spatial impulse response means if the system is excited by certain impulse signal, then what is the response? And that response is represented by the differential equation. That is what all about the Green's function technique is. So according to this Green's function technique, what we need to do? We need to replace this source. Here our source is J. J is the current density. So that source will be replaced by an impulse function in space. If we replace the source by an impulse function in space, that is by an delta function, here and finding the solution of the differential equation, that solution is called Green's function. Is called Green's function. Okay. So if we replace this system, this whole system by delta function, then whatever the response we supposed to get, that response is represented by Green's function. The Green's function completely characterizes the system and once the Green's function is known, the potential for any arbitrary excitation can be obtained by simple superposition. So once we have the response of a system by exciting that system with an impulse input, then we can take any kind of input by simply taking the superposition of those impulse responses. Okay, so as a whole we can write this Green's function, which will give us partial impulse response. So according to this Green's function, what we can write? Green's function technique. This equation 19 will become del square G plus beta square G is equals to delta, which is in space. Okay. So we have taken this Green's function G and we have excited our system by any impulse input. That is equation number 20. So what is this G? G is a scalar quantity. Now we need to take out this scalar operator del square. So which coordinate system will select? The most appropriate one will be the spherical coordinate system. The radiation will be radially outward in every direction from the source. Okay, so therefore this Green's function will be in the spherical coordinate system, because the radiation will be in a direction which is radially outward like a sphere. Therefore Green's function in spherical coordinate system this one will be 1 by r square del del r square del t by del r plus 1 by r square sine theta del del theta of sine theta del g by del theta plus 1 by r square sine square theta del 2 g by del phi 2 plus beta square g is equals to delta in space. Equation number 21. So let us consider this impulse excitation is located at the origin, that is equals to r is equals to 0. If we are having a sphere, the impulse is located at r is equals to 0. So what does it mean? Which means putting the source at the origin, which is an impulse and does not have any directional dependence. So let us assume the impulse excitation is located at the origin, that is at r is equals to 0, which means putting the source at the origin which is an impulse, and does not have any directional dependence. Does not have any directional dependence. So the solution of this equation 21 is now spherically symmetrical. It is symmetrical everywhere. So in any, if you take the solution for any value of theta and phi, that will be same. So we can say it is does not depends upon the theta and phi. The solution of equation 21 is spherically symmetrical, which does not depends upon theta and phi. It is only depending upon the r, where we have been taking the source, either it is on the origin or some other value. But if we consider this is the sphere, so this r will be same in every direction of theta and phi, so that will not at all depending upon the theta and phi. The solution will not vary if we will change theta and phi, but where this excitation is kept, either at the origin or at some other value of r, that will depends upon the r only. So what we can write, therefore del theta is equals to 0 and del phi is equals to 0. So this equation 21 reduces to 1 by r square ddr of r square dt by dr plus beta square g delta r. Now this impulse function becomes the function of radius r. Okay. Here the partial derivative with respect to r and change to the full derivative, since g is now the function of r only. It is not at all dependent upon the theta and phi. Okay. Now, as we know, the impulse response of a differential equation is just the complementary solution with arbitrary constant appropriately evaluated with the initial or boundary condition. The impulse response of any differential equation is only just complementary function or complementary solution. So we know there are two solutions for a differential equation, CA plus PI. So for the impulse response, it is only the complementary function. So it should be evaluated properly with taking into consideration of the all of these initial or boundary conditions. Now let us assume a temporary variable. Assume a temporary variable psi is equals to gr. Now if you take the derivative of this psi, d psi by dr is equals to g plus r dg by dr. What is this r dg by dr? It is d psi by dr minus g. Now if we put this value over here, putting in equation number 22, putting this value in equation 22, putting in equation 22, what we'll get? We're going to put this r dg by dr. So that can be written as we used this value psi is equals to gr. So we can write d2 psi by dr2 plus beta square psi is equals to r delta r. Okay, so we can put this value here, so that will be get multiplied with this r d psi by dr minus this gr. Then we need to take the derivative of that. Then if we take the cross multiplication, we can have this one value. Okay, so we are taking this 1r here in the right hand side. So by taking all this multiplication, we can get this expression. Now this equation 23 is a simple second order differential equation. The simple second order differential equation. So we can easily find out the solution, and its solution is psi is equals to c e to the power minus j beta r plus d e to the power j beta r 24, where c and d are constant. So this solution is similar to a transmission line, solution of a transmission line, and one can easily recognize that two terms in this side are have the wave traveling in the two different directions. It gives the indication that wave traveling in the two different directions. One is in the positive r, one is in the negative r direction. It is same as the transmission line equation. So one away from the r is equals to 0, exponentially increasing. One is exponentially decaying. One away from r is equals to 0 and one towards r is equals to 0 respectively. So which one will take? Will take which is going outward from r is equals to 0. So we have assumed the infinite space with only one source at the origin. So there is no other source which has been coming towards that sphere. So we have the wave traveling towards r is equals to 0. So we can consider this d is equals to 0 for that case. This solution is similar to that of a transmission line and can easily recognized as the two terms in the, okay, I'm just writing right hand side for the wave traveling in r direction. R direction. One away from r is equals to 0 and other towards r is equals to 0 respectively. So since we have assumed the infinite space with only one source at the origin, so the wave traveling towards r is equals to 0 should be identical 0. So any wave which is coming towards that r is equal to 0, that is for the origin itself, that can be 0. So considering d is equals to 0, we can take psi is equals to c e to the power minus j beta r 25. So what is this psi? Psi is equals to g into r. So we got this g is equals to c e to the power minus j beta r by r. Number 26. So it denotes the amplitude of g which is decreasing inversely with radial distance. It denotes the amplitude of g decreases inversely with radial distance r. Okay, so we got the value of this g. If you give me 10 minutes, then I will complete. Within 10 minutes, I will complete this part. Otherwise, you won't get the link if I continue in the next day. So this equation 26, what it says, this equation 26, which is e to the power minus beta r by r, it denotes the constant phase surfaces, corresponds to r is equals to constant. So if it consider some different values of r, so that will give you certain function which is for different values of r, it has been starting and exponentially increasing. So if you take r is equals to 0, it will be a constant. If you take some value 1, 2, 3, so it will take from this origin, it will exponentially increasing for different r, it will exponentially increasing like this for different values of r, like this. So as a whole, whenever we will be considering for a sphere, it defines some constant phase surfaces. Equation 26 denotes constant phase surfaces corresponds to r is equals to constant, which are spherical in shape. So these kind of waves are known as spherical waves. These waves, this wave is called a spherical wave. So how it looks like? It is the center. Around this you will have all the waves. Around this you will have all the waves. So it is radially outward. It is radially outward. So you can consider some phase fronts, some constant phase fronts for a spherical wave traveling radially outward, or something like a freely expanding balloon. If you are having certain balloon which is spherical in shape, so it can expand freely in any direction for different values of r. So if we take spherical coordinate system for visualizing this 3D space as sphere, then the solution of the wave equations is spherical wave, because we have been considered the spherical coordinate system. Now for this equation 26, this one, so from this we can take out, if we can able to take out this c, we can able to get the value of this g. So once we got the value of g, we'll put in our previous equation. Now the arbitrary constant c can be found out by putting equation 26 into equation 22. This 26 in equation 22. If we put the value of this g here, and then integrating both sides over a volume around r is equals to 0 with r tends to 0. The source, the impulse source is at the origin, so we can say it is very negligible. R tends to 0. The volume around r is equals to 0 at the origin. Where is this source exist? It is exists at the origin. So what is the shape of that source? It is an impulse at t is equals to 0, very negligible source, that is r tends to 0. And applying appropriate boundary conditions, so limit r tends to 0 will take integration from 0 to r, theta is from 0 to pi, phi is from 0 to 2s pi, 1 by r square d dr. We are going to put the value of this g, r square d dr of c by r e to the power minus j beta r square sin theta dr d theta d phi. It is the differential volume in the 3D space, plus beta square g integration 0 to r 0 to pi 0 to 2s pi c by r minus j beta r square sin theta d phi is equals to integration, volume integration del r dr. So finding the solution something like that, r tends to 0, 4 pi minus c, for this it is j beta r plus 1 to the power minus j beta r minus 4 pi beta square integration 0 to r minus e to the power, sorry, it is minus j beta r dr 1. So integration of impulse, it is 1. It is step, or limit r tends to 0, 4 pi integration minus c r plus 1 sorry, it will be the second bracket only, minus 4 pi beta square limit r tends to 0 integration 0 to r minus j beta r r dr is equals to 1. So therefore we can find out this one as 4 pi c. You just do all the calculations. I'm just skipping the intermediate steps. It is coming out as 1. So this constant value is coming out as 1 by 4 pi. So this Green's function is g is equals to minus e to the power minus j beta r by 4 pi r. This is the value of the Green's function. Okay. So once we have this Green's function, we can easily take out the value of a, because what we said that on that equation that vector quantity a will be replaced by some scalar, and once we get the solution of that Green's function, that scalar will replace that scalar with an appropriate vector constant. Okay. So in a normal system, when we have the impulse response, for our case which is the Green's function, the output of any system is the convolution of the impulse response with the driving function or the input, right? Whenever we are having certain impulse response, then we can take out the output as the convolution between that impulse response and the input. So here the driving function is mu j. The function of the wave is the minus of mu j, right? So we can consider the convolution of this impulse response with that driving function. So our vector potential, I'm just writing directly after that, the vector potential is coming out as AR, which is a function of radial distance r. It is volume integration, the convolution of that. So mu jr prime e to the power minus j beta r minus r prime by 4 pi r minus r prime d v prime. So it is the ultimate solution of our required vector potential. So what is this r denotes? R denotes the location of the current source. This r prime denotes the location of the current source, and this r is the location where we are finding the vector potential. So let us consider we are having a current source like this. Inside some closed volume we are having our current source. It is somewhat like this. Here we are having this current source j r prime. So from this, if we consider this is our origin, it is having the r prime distance, this is our origin. So from that origin we are looking at the observation point. It is having the distance of r. So from the origin we are putting our source at a distance of r prime, that is what j r prime, and from this origin we are looking at the observation point which is having the distance of r. So from that source the observation point is at a distance of r minus r prime. That is what has been taken here. So this is the Green's function, that is the scalar function what we have taken for the solution in place of the vector quantity a. So what was our thinking, that will replace that scalar quantity with the appropriate vector constant at last. Now will replace. So this is the Green's function, which is the response of a system when the input has been given with an impulse. So how we are getting the output of that system which has been excited by an impulse response or impulse input, will take out the output as the convolution between the impulse response and the input of that system. So what is the input? Input to the system is mu j. Input to the system is mu j. It is vector. Okay. And impulse response, this is the impulse response. So we have taken the convolution between these two. That will result into our constant A. Okay. So I've taken a longer time. You just go quite concentratingly, just put the concentration on all of the equations which we have been written. Then only you can find the link. Otherwise, starting from the previous class, otherwise it is quite difficult because so many equations are there. Starting from the defining this vector potential, scalar potential, then finding all the solutions for that. It is quite a longer process. So many equations have been involved. You just go with that and put the concentration while you have been studying all those things. Otherwise, you won't be able to get any link. So here you can start after this how this equation came. So you just simply take that this is the response of the system due to input impulse. So by taking the impulse response and multiplying with the input, that is mu j, you are getting this is the output. Okay.